Hey guys, it's the Scribbler, and hi.
Before the video starts, I just want to remind you to subscribe and turn on post notifications. It only costs $2,000 and it would help me out a lot. I appreciate it. I already say this at the end of every
video, but because I have an average viewer duration of about 2 minutes, I'm putting it here. Also, if you're on your computer, above the subscribe button, there are links to my Twitch, merch store, Twitter, and Instagram. Anyway, grab yourself some grass water, regular water, or Sprite. Enjoy the video.
Hello Internet, welcome to Game Theory, where today, this is it friends, after 7 years of research, planning, poring over every detail of this franchise, nearly 50 episodes exploring every scrap of story ever
Was he
put
gonna
out
like
into
glitch
this
into
universe.
the actual theory or something?
I've done it. I have an answer to any question you could possibly ask me. What's in the box? Who's Orange Guy? What is Mangle's gender? I even legitimately think that I have a timeline
apparently
all
I
figured
clicked
out.
on a
This
FNAF
won't be
theory
without exaggeration, my
subconsciously
final
because I've been
so
playing that a
strap
lot
in,
recently.
loyal theorists. It's been a long ride, but this is the moment that you've all been waiting for, the climax of our journey. Today we solve everything
DDLC?
about Five Nights at Freddy's once and for all.
No,
Oh my god.
it's my turn. There is no one else. There is just
I remember this from his old theories.
Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica.
She had to record a lot of voice lines for that. Just fun. Okay. I like how it's like all the logos are changed too. What is this crap?
Hello Internet, welcome
Just Monica,
to
just Monica. Since 2011.
Monica Theory, where there's just Monica. Hit that subscribe button to make Monica happy, please. Speaking of, have you ever had the feeling that you exist in a virtual simulation of a school? Oh wait, that's like school for most people in the post-pandemic times. Anyway, for many of you, school might still be virtual, but our back-to-school merch is very, very
Oh my
real.
god.
Like our brand new big idea backpack.
Okay, well,
with
go
cushy
buy this,
laptop
but
compartment,
I'm just gonna
USB
skip past it
or
because
the
I've seen this a lot
universally
over the years. I think it's only
If it
happened
wasn't
like
obvious,
one
today's
other
episode
time,
has
but
us diving back into the world of Doki Doki Literature Club, with Team Salvato recently releasing a new version of the game, Doki Doki Literature
by the way, I
Club
have streamed a
Plus,
little bit
as I
of
like to
this,
call
and I'm
it,
gonna
the
finish
DDLC
it, but
DLC, complete with new mechanics, a new look, and
been
a
busy.
brand new layer of mysteries to solve. So, if it's been a minute, or several million minutes, since you last thought about the game when it first came out back in, 2017, let me quickly refresh your memory. DDLC is a game that
I
on the
still
surface
remember
looks
it.
like any normal, cutesy visual novel dating sim. You're the newest member of the high school literature
It's
club.
very,
where you build
very
relationships
juicy.
with 4 girls who are all definitely, most assuredly,
And
18
got
years
me
old.
most of my
Nothing creepy to
loyal
see here,
subscribers.
folks. There's the bubbly Sayori, bookish Yuri, aggressive
Bookish.
Natsuki, and club leader Monika.
Okay.
Over the course of your first few days in the club, you come to learn all about their unique personalities, their likes and dislikes, like Natsuki's love of manga and cooking, and Sayori's
Yes,
need
it's a
to make
very
others happy. As your
slow
relationships
burn
deepen, the girls
game.
start opening up to you about their problems, like Natsuki's father not feeding her, or Yuri's shirt being too tight for her chest. Her words, not mine. Poem
Yeah,
by poem, you start wooing the
that's
girl
what
you're
I got
choosing, but
from
not
your
all
skin.
is as it seems. As you go through the game, things start to go off the rails. Characters become erratic. Their behavior starts to get more and more extreme, with many of their worst tendencies getting multiplied exponentially.
I
Then
wonder.
Sayori
I've been
takes
wondering,
her own
like
life,
ever since
and
this
everything
was like
changes. You
announced,
reload the game only to
if it's
find
gonna
the
be
code
just another one of
glitched beyond
these.
repair. She's gone, even removed from the game's files, and no amount of saving and restarting can bring her back. One by
Flying was
one,
very,
the
very
other
well.
characters fall away until you're left alone with just Monika. Let's be honest, she was
Yes.
always the right choice all along, you know? Why would you choose to go with any of these other girls? Monika reveals that she'd somehow seen the truth, that she'd known this was a game all
I
along
like
because she'd
Sayori,
been
but I
granted
mean,
a higher level
Monika
of
and
access
Sayori
to
are
the
pretty
game's
similar,
code. Her tampering
apparently.
with sliders in the background caused the other girls to
You know,
die,
when she became
just so
president.
she could be the one left with you. Everyone always asking who the best girl is, no one ever asking how the best girl is. So, how do you stop her? Well, by beating her at her own game. You have to
Probably
go into
very
the
depressed.
files for the game and delete her character file. a technique that she's been using against all the others since the start. Now that
Very
alone would have been
cool
a pretty
idea
incredible
for
game
that.
experience. A psychological horror title disguised as a visual novel where you have to alter the game's files to win. But what put Doki Doki over the top was that the story didn't end there. In a series of 2 episodes we did after the initial game's release, we
those are the
dug
ones I
deeper
reacted to.
into the game's files, finding clues
Don't watch
hidden
those
throughout
videos,
the
though, they're
various
kinda
poems
cringe.
and dialogue. We discovered files that could be converted to different formats, like PDFs and text files. We ran codes through base64 converters,
It even had,
ciphers,
like, a
binary
3D.
decryptors. We were inverting image files, wrapping them around cones.
Yeah.
We even found a QR code that was hidden inside an audio file. That QR code led us to a website
Like,
hinting
how
at
the frick
something
did
called Project
Salvador think
Libitina,
of
an
this crap?
experiment that was trying to train people to open their third eye, which we come to learn turns them into killing machines. And if that seems a bit random and disconnected, it's the exact story that's hinted at in Doki Doki's main game, when you speak to Yuri about the book that she's been reading, The Portrait of Markov. Those videos are still up, by the way, if you're interested in checking them out in more detail, but now they're all
Yeah, I remember
age-gated. It
those.
just goes to show how much YouTube has changed in the past 4 years.
Was
Anyway,
there like
it
a
was Monika's
website that
character file
he
that was
went
the most
to
interesting,
that was
hiding a
talking
note
about
for us that suggested they all might come from a different game entirely, and that Monika, rather than being
Something
the
coming
villain,
up.
would actually be the hero of any new sequel to come out of the series.
I know that this isn't my only story, and I think everyone else has had the same kind of experience, some kind of deja vu. I think you might be able to go back, or however you want to put it, to
So
go back and
interesting.
tell them what's going to happen. If they knew ahead of time, they should be able to avoid it. If they remember their time with me in the other worlds, they should remember what I tell them. This is my story. It's time to be an effing hero. 2018.
She's trying to save the rest of the girls from whatever fate awaits in Project Libitina, with the last point of her
2018, you
message
say.
saying 2018, and then nothing happened. 2018 came and went, and so did 2019.
2018 was pretty
2020,
freaking good,
but
though.
now we have DDLC Plus, which
Would've been a
well,
lot
isn't
better
the game that
if
we were
this
expecting
came out,
for the
but-
past 3 years, but does have a lot more in it. Stuff that confirms some of what we've theorized
Very nice
about,
audio
gives us a way to
tracks.
peek into the terrifying alternate world of Project Libitina, and suggests that Monika may have just been able to escape. So let's stop reminiscing about the past and jump into the game, shall we? What does the Plus
Yes.
add to the original game? Well, when you open up the game, you're welcomed by a desktop. Yep, this is the big new addition
Yeah,
here,
it
friends. At first,
reminds me
I was
of
underwhelmed.
Buddy
I
Simulator
mean, it's been
now.
over 3 years, but I also understand why it's here.
Which I
the
still need to
original game was
do
so
a playthrough of
popular
that,
they
the
wanted
rest
to
of
bring it
it.
to the mainstream market, i.e. consoles, but you can't just open a game file and delete entities on a
Yeah.
console like you
Pretty
can
good
on a PC.
alternative,
Shout out to
but
the PC
kind of brings you out a
Masterware.
little bit.
So, this in-game desktop seems to be the best way to allow for the original file-altering experience. But, dear theorists, there's also so much more here. So much more. The first feature that stands out on the desktop of DDLC Plus are the side stories. These unlock as you complete poems for specific characters
Oh,
throughout the
dang
main
it.
game of DDLC. But again, something
I just
is a
spoiled
bit
all the
off.
names.
Don't get me wrong, they're similar enough to
Doesn't
the
matter
original
that
game.
much, but-
Visual novels watching the girls we know in what seems to be a prequel to the events of DDLC. We watch as they form the literature club, develop friendships, but there are
I
a
do
few
like
things
the
that
side
stand out.
stories, but-
First, we, the player, aren't in the game anymore. We just watch the stories unfold with
All right, sorry. This is my only pause, probably. Maybe not, but whatever. Yeah, I mentioned this in my live streams, but I don't know if you guys are gonna watch any of those, so I'm just gonna say that I liked the first game because of, well, I like the characters first of all, which they're simple, but I don't know, I like them for some reason. My favorite part was when their personalities like all went crazy and you started to look into the files more and like try to figure it out, like what's going on with everybody. And that was like my favorite part of the game. So like these side stories, like I wasn't like too excited for them, but like it still hits that spot that I liked about it. Like I did like the characters. That wasn't my favorite thing, but it did make the game a lot more enjoyable just to have those like tropey kind of characters with a hidden kind of thing going on. So
no interaction or
Yeah.
choice. They're just that. They're visual novels. Secondly, Monika isn't acting in the way that we're used to. Instead, she seems to be normal. She isn't the confident leader that we're used to. Instead, she's insecure, shy, even a little neurotic. And she's definitely not acknowledging anything outside of the world that she exists in. What's also intriguing is that when you enter the side story menu, you're met with this line of text. The side stories are stories of friendships that are unrelated to the events
Yeah.
of the main game. It's Weird, right? Why would it be so important for these to be kept separate from the main story, especially when it seems like they're meant to be a prequel? There's something more than meets the eye going on here. More than meets the third eye. Am I right? It's a third eye Project Libitina joke. No? Nobody? Okay, moving on. Elsewhere on the desktop, we have access to emails and files written by employees of a company named Metaverse Enterprise. The files, however,
Yeah, I watched him do this live, like figure some of this stuff out.
Unknown error, please try again later. Digging deeper through the desktop system, you find a nested series of empty file folders, each one numbered from 0 to 5.
Yeah, that has got to be some freaking code.
There is one file that you can open, Tower Keys, and this is where the metagame truly begins. In this file, we're given a clue, 240, clock time, 221. Immediately, this starts to give us our code. Navigate through the folders, 2, 2, then 1, to find a file hidden at the end. In this case, project plan.
Yeah.
And then you adjust the time on your device to 240.
So we got some other file crap going on now.
How it said, please try again later? Yeah,
not just deleting and opening
read
this
your
time.
error messages. Now, most aren't that easy. Those 3-number codes plus a time are hidden in every nook and cranny of this game. Like when you unlock the file track 6 name ideas, it gives you explicitly the code 030, but you don't have a time. You have to go to the song library after completing the main game, and the song matches the name of a song with his name ideas. Let's teamwork. That track has a length of 158, and that right there is your time code. So reset your system time.
I like
and the
that.
file opens. Do it enough times, and
So you have to like unlock the songs to get some
These,
of the
combined
lore.
with emails sent from the Metaverse project team that unlock as you play the game, start to reveal the bigger story. And the more you unlock, the deeper and darker this rabbit hole goes. The story focuses on a group of people working for Metaverse Enterprises: Ro, Ravi, Lib, Ive, and Paula, who, based on information in multiple files, seems to be maintaining a side project in order to save their jobs. In the file DDLC.txt, we learn their team name. Quote, I want a cool team name. Something like Team Salvation? Team Salvation, or how about Team Salvato? Seems like our real-world game makers may have just actually become a part of the game's lore. But the funny thing is, it seems like all of us might have wound
That would be
up
very,
as part
very
of the game's
meta,
lore.
like
You see, throughout
fifth
all of
wall.
these emails, we get hints that the universe this design team lives in, which also happens to be our universe, may actually be a simulation. From that same DDLC doc, quote, learn through the existential crises of others how to cope with your own simulated universe. And again, from a different file, this time called Project Plan, create human-readable version of Fabric benchmark results, suggesting we live in a simulated universe. So it seems like the team's plan is to create a series of simulated worlds with characters that they can watch to learn what people do when they're in a simulation in order to identify whether or not they themselves live in a simulation. They call the simulations they're creating VMs, or virtual machines, and the description for the first of these, VM1, should sound a bit familiar. Quote, a small-scale simulation with literature assets for easy data collection, 4 entities, characters, and a small physical space. It's our Doki Doki crew, which means that we were right. Monika is an AI. Technically, all the girls are. But we also learn
Why would they
how
make it a
Monika
dating
got her
game, though?
powers. In that same project plan file, it explicitly
dating
talks about
simulation?
observing the effects of elevated access, knowledge
Seems very,
of
like,
simulation.
random.
What this tells us is that basically the team
But he probably
Salvato
didn't think
crew
of
gave
that
one of
when he
their
was making
simulated
the
characters,
first
Monika,
game,
the
but-
knowledge that she's in a simulation to see what she does with it, what motivates her, what it does to her psyche. However, what good is an experiment without a control group? Remember all those odd things I said about the side stories in the game? How there's no player character,
So we're, like,
how it's not
observing what
connected to the main
happens,
story,
basically?
How Monika seems normal.
playing
Well,
it?
that is our control group, another iteration of the VM1 simulation where Monika doesn't discover her powers. There are a couple of emails and text files that help us prove this. The first, meeting notes 2.txt, mentions the following: clone VM1, same elevated access, but prevent the entity from discovering it. The entity obviously being Monika. Meeting notes 3 also confirms the side stories to be the control group, stating, quote, snapshot slightly earlier in time, compare end control sim to start of VM1, which lines up perfectly with the side stories ending with the creation of the literature club before the start of the main game in DDLC. And if that wasn't enough evidence for you, Rhea, another member of the team, outright tells
So
us in
it's
the email
like-
side stories, quote again, just to clarify, all the recordings labeled side stories are part of the controlled simulation, right? And again, in the same email, we once again get a reference to the unreality of
so
their
it's
own world.
not
Scrolling down a bit further,
exactly say
If I'm keeping
horror,
track, we have what, like
but
5
it's
different universes
still
in total, with 3 or 4 of them created and then destroyed by Monika,
this,
of course.
you know,
It's funny because
deeper
I keep
than it
wanting to
looks.
speculate on which one is the real universe, but in reality, they all are. As real as ours is, anyway. But what about the player? Why are we not a part of that control group? The absence of a player seems odd, even to the team. Quote from the email: character discrepancy. Having run the control simulation for a while, it's evident that a certain character is missing from any mention or appearance. This makes me speculate that Monika's meddling is less clumsy than we think, because she would have had to manufacture this character herself as a way of forcing interaction between her and the user. Once you get this email, you unlock a concept drawing in the gallery for none other than the player character. Monika created the player character. Note, I'm not saying the player, just the character that the player controls. This is why we aren't playing the side stories.
Okay.
With her elevated access hidden, Monika doesn't create a player character. She doesn't need it. She isn't aware of everything that's going on, and so she doesn't need to interact with any sort of user. Speaking of Monika, we learn in this new content where her name comes from. Once you unlock the email, let's move on, we get ourselves a fuller picture. Quote, we need to have a meeting about shifting our focus a little bit. We've reset VM1 how many times now? We've obviously gotten spoiled by the ease of access that VM1 offers us, but it's just unrealistic for someone in real life to be granted
Is this
the level
him,
of
like,
elevation even close
setting
to
up like
monitor
the
kernel
second
access.
simulation
Monitor
game?
Kernel access. Monika. But what's interesting is that after so many resets and experiments, they've come to realize that the permissions they've granted Monika are too high. She doesn't just suspect that she's in a simulation, she knows and can manipulate it. That level of knowledge just doesn't happen unless you meet Lawrence Fishburne and swallow a red pill. It's at this point that the Metaverse team starts to shift their focus over to VM2, Project Libitina. Yep, that is still very much a thing here in all its dark psychological horror glory, and we're gonna talk
I
about
really
that
want to
later,
see
but I'm
this,
still not done
like
with what
that Project
VM1 and the
Libitina thing.
Literature Club have to teach us. Or should I say Monika
game.
isn't done with us. You see, we just talked about how Monika created the player character, or at least a placeholder for him, in
So we
order to
freaking look like
interact with
that?
us, the user. But why would she want to do that? Well,
See
she
why
wants to save
everyone
her friends. She told us as much in that hidden message
liked
from her
us.
character file.
Everyone else is dead, but I know that this isn't my only story. I can see that now, really clearly. If they know ahead of time, then they should be able to avoid it.
Plus, our theory that Monika shares memories with the Monika from the other game, or to use this new game's terminology, the other virtual machine VM2, is confirmed in an email from DDLC Plus. Quote, has anyone evaluated the side effects that might be caused by sharing a memory pool between multiple VMs rather than allocating them separately? I'm looking at some of the files VM1 is generating, and I'm finding some information
This is
that
really, like,
definitely
cool.
shouldn't be there. My best guess is that memory being freed from VM2 isn't getting zeroed out, which technically gives VM1 access to it. So
I might have to
Monika
do
is
this
able to see
on
into
one of the
VM2,
streams, maybe.
seeing the horrors that befall her friends over in the Project Libitina simulation, and she wants to help them, but how do you do that when you're trapped in a video game? Well, you break out of the game. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that Monika is pulling a William Afton glitch trap move and has hijacked someone's body.
I wonder
do
if he
it. But
actually
she's
got
not
that, like,
focused on
idea
us. She's using a
from
member of Team
DDLC,
Salvato,
like
senior
Scott
engineer Ive Laster. That whole speech of hers that we found hidden in her character file.
Who are you? I can't see you, but I know you're there. Yeah, you can definitely hear me. You've been watching for a while now, right? It's time to be a hero. Both of us.
That's not to us, it's to him, Ive. How do I know? Let's look a bit closer at Ive. Ive is an interesting character throughout the files that the new game gives us.
He's like
We've
the
seen a few emails
protagonist.
from him, as well as seeing him mentioned in a few meeting notes. His writing style is casual. He uses phrases like OMG and types things like ha ha ha.
Oh
Other
my
Team
God.
Salvato members mention that Ive makes meetings go on for too long. He also seems to be obsessed with interacting with the VM1 simulation. Obsessed with making it into a game. Quote from meeting notes 2, playable equals observable form, not a game. Stay focused, Ive, which leads Ive to write the note track 6 name ideas where he calls it Operation Not a Game. So that all gives us an idea of his personality and his writing style, which is why
So
I
Ive
believe
is,
he's the writer of the DDLC
probably the reason why
.txt
it's a game.
file that talks about turning VM1 into a video game. Notice all the extra punctuation, the want for things to be fun and cool, and of course the signature ha ha ha. But what does any of this have to do with Monika? Well, it seems like a random tangent, except when you look at Meeting Notes 3. Obviously, Meeting Notes 3 comes after 1 and 2, so comes later in the timeline. But it has a few things that felt odd to me. Quote, fifth entity in VM1, not part of original genetic model, not present in data dumps, very bizarre. Ive is less talkative today. Meeting ending on time? 12:55, OMG. Obviously, the mention of the time is another clue to the file puzzles, but the fact that they ended on time because Ive was less talkative was a detail that grabbed my attention. People, of course, have off days.
You
so
probably made
was
it
nothing,
then.
but it feels out of character. Plus, that other line about there being a fifth entity within the system that's never been present feels weird. We know it's not the player character that Monika created because Team Salvato is all aware of his presence inside the simulation. So who then is it? And the IVE weirdness continues. The first email that you unlock, but the one that comes last in the timeline, if you actually look at the dates, is an email from IVE with the subject line, "Have a nice weekend." It reads, "I'm on leave the rest of the week. Contact Ravi if you need to
Have a
schedule
nice
server
weekend.
time, but I expect my jobs to run for a few days since we've collected so much data this week. How about we arrange a meeting to discuss the results when I return? IVE Laster, Senior Engineer." As it's the first email you get, it's easy to overlook. A lot of people don't really think all that much of it. We don't really know.
That was like what was in the file in the first game.
More and more about him from earlier and earlier emails in the
Not
timeline,
that,
his
but like just the
tone
name. Have a
has
nice weekend.
changed here. Wanting to be
I
a
think.
meeting about results, straight to the point, no abbreviations or ha-ha-ha's, his tone feels off. But I couldn't quite figure it out until I looked at the
Is it like
subject
a
heading, "Have
Chucky
a
thing?
nice
He's like-
weekend." Why does that sound so familiar? Where
Monika's
have
like
I seen
in
that
a
before in this franchise? Oh yeah, in the
body
original
now.
DDLC during Act 2, when you spend the weekend after Yuri made Swiss cheese out of her own stomach, you find a file in the game's folder called, you
Yes.
guessed it, "Have a nice weekend." Exactly the same as the email subject from IVE, even down to the exclamation point. That file, by the way, is a text string.
And
encoded
Monika
first in
left,
base
too,
64, and also
after
by
that,
a Legionnaire
so-
cipher with the key Libitina.
Makes
Again, this
sense.
simulation's crossing over, sharing memory, with Monika as the one who's able to access it all. This, to me, could only mean one thing. Monika has pulled a William Afton. She's managed to swap her consciousness with IVE. Think about it. We know Monika has a very sensible, mature writing style based on her poems.
But then
so
she
it makes
came
sense
back at the
that
end of the
she
game
wrote
and
it,
started, like,
trying
talking to
blend
us.
in, as well
It
as
didn't
why
sound
IVE
like
might suddenly be
anything-
so quiet in a meeting. Monika doesn't want to
Sounded
draw
like
attention
Monika that was talking
herself.
to us.
It also explains that mysterious fifth entity in the last snapshot of VM1, which nobody can explain. It's IVE. He's trapped in the game thanks to his own hubris. He wanted so desperately for his experiment to be fun, to make it into a game, and when he saw that Monika had made a character for him to assume, he started playing, only to experience the horrors that we did, but his fate was much worse than ours. Monika's note hidden in her character file, I believe, is directed specifically at IVE, thanking him for all the help that he's given her so far, talking to him about how they need to work together to save everyone else. But by work together, she means using his body to exit the simulation and help her friends over in VM2 from the outside. In other words, Monika has escaped. And if that weren't enough, there's yet another entity that we have to be on the lookout for. One coming from the other
Very
side,
sister
Project
location
Libitina,
like.
an entity named Marla. But more on her and the horrific experiments that are happening over on VM2 next time. And don't forget, you can still grab that new Game
Okay.
Gear backpack, pencil case, or keychain. Just
Oh my
click
God.
on the links below this video and become the
Alright.
obsession of all your friends, virtually or physically. Though, hopefully not too obsessed. Looking at you, Yuri. So until next time, remember...
It's all just Monika. Just Monika. Just Monika. See you next time.
Okay. Well, that definitely seems, credible to, the past of the game, and it basically tells you that, that what he just said is right in the emails. Like, it's very obvious, honestly. So I have a feeling that's exactly what's happening in the game, or like what happened. I'm not sure if that was like retconned or if, he kind of turned that into something more later. I mean, if he did, then he did a really good job at making it seem like that was like his intention the entire time. But yeah, that's this is why I like this game. It's just super like juicy, just all that you can kind of think about with it. And like, you obviously know that it's just a coded thing, which kind of brings me out of it sometimes, because like I know that Monika obviously isn't a living thing in the game, but like it really is really like convincing. The first time I played it, like it's never really been done before, and it was just kind of cool. I mean, Undertale did it, but yeah, Undertale was just kind of, it was kind of like part of its humor almost. And it is a little bit scary. Like there are like some glitches in Undertale, but not as much, not as scary as DDLC. Yeah, I don't know. I just really like games like that, because if you can do so much with games, because they're just, you can get so much more like immersed into them and the story, and you can hide stuff in the code and everything. It's just they seem like a lot more fun to just like dissect and figure out things. So I think it's really good like place for people with very like complex ideas to go to and like just make whatever the frick they want and hide as many things as like they want in like the code and in the game. You know, just like all the FNAF games, like he had a freaking code out of like wall panels, like you can do whatever. And that was a very nice theory, by the way. I don't know what I'm freaking talking about right now, but yeah, I hope you enjoyed this game theory. It's been a while. I hope I can get some old people back into you know, some of this stuff. Get some of them old fans like revived from the dead to come on and reunite, watch some theories again, and possibly play some DDLC. I don't know. Maybe try to figure some of it out on our own. Maybe create some new theories. Be all, you know, skeptical about it together. I don't know. But I kind of like Bumblebee. Click the dude. Goodbye.